We are still prioritizing the battle against fentanyl in these.
At 4:45 a.m. on a crisp desert morning along the Arizona border, the radar changed forever. The walls of a seemingly innocuous warehouse began to crack. Dust and echoing alarms filled the air, and within seconds, the breach became reality. A massive tunnel, carved deep beneath a border stronghold, was exposed. This was the moment when the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and its partners burst into action, targeting the hidden arteries of a cartel so vast it had slipped through the cracks for years. Through precise coordination, federal tactical teams neutralized the silent hum of conveyor belts, unopened crates, and false walls. The operation wasn't just about drugs, but about power. Inside that tunnel lay evidence of more than shipments. They discovered a network of over 150 cartel leaders coordinating move and strike operations across states. That number alone was enough to jolt Washington. The scale of what happened that morning is still hard to believe. This was no ordinary raid. It was the kind of operation that raises more questions than it answers. Who built a tunnel this advanced right under U.S. soil? How did it stay hidden for so long? Equipped with ventilation systems, electric rails, and encrypted communication lines. And why were over 150 cartel leaders meeting just hours before the strike? What ICE uncovered beneath the desert wasn't just a smuggling route. It was a secret infrastructure, a subterranean network that blurred the line between organized crime and military precision. Every meter of that tunnel told a story of money, corruption, and technology pushed to its limits. So what exactly was the cartel planning down there? And what new threat does it reveal about the border we thought we understood? Stay tuned, because the truth behind this operation may be far darker and far smarter than anyone expected. Subscribe now to Military Power and join us as we uncover the hidden war playing out beneath the US-Mexico border. Deep within America's network of freight highways, a quiet war was being waged. Across the wide corridors of Kentucky and Tennessee, regions often viewed as simple arteries of interstate commerce, a parallel economy was forming beneath the surface. The trucks and warehouses that once symbolized honest trade were being repurposed into instruments of a vast criminal machine. Each shipment, each stop along the route, was part of an invisible war for control of America's supply lines. At the center of this hidden empire stood Rafael El Sombra Ortega, a man whose rise began behind the wheel of a freight truck. Years of driving gave him an intimate knowledge of the system, its routes, blind spots, and weaknesses. When he turned that knowledge to crime, he transformed from a driver into the architect of a logistics empire built on deception. Through his connections with the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, El Sombra expanded his operations beyond the border, fusing Mexican cartel discipline with U.S. infrastructure expertise. Behind the polished fronts of shipping and freight companies, Ortega's network moved with surgical precision. Containers labeled as industrial goods were, in fact, carrying methamphetamine and fentanyl. Shell companies registered under false identities laundered the profits, while a network of compromised officers provided cover, sometimes by falsifying inspection logs, other times by simply looking the other way. The result was an operation so sophisticated that it blended seamlessly into the country's commercial flow. For 18 months, the network thrived unchecked. More than 10 tons of narcotics slipped through interstate corridors, and over $400 million were washed clean through fraudulent transactions. Trucks bearing El Sombra's markings rolled through way stations, coasted past patrols, and disappeared into distribution hubs without a trace. His empire operated in plain sight, hiding beneath the monotony of American commerce. Then, a single anomaly shattered the illusion. A suspicious wire transfer tied to an anonymous account in Knoxville raised alarms within federal monitoring systems. What began as a minor irregularity soon unraveled into something much greater, a revelation that the quiet heart of America's transport system had been repurposed into the backbone of a transnational drug empire. What seemed an ordinary highway corridor was, in truth, the central vein of organized crime, pulsing through the nation's infrastructure. At 2:17 a.m., under the cover of darkness near the Arizona-Mexico line, an alert flashed in a secure operations room in Washington. The software behind it, a covert financial monitoring system within the Drug Enforcement Administration, had flagged an unusual electronic transfer between two shell freight companies. The two firms supposedly moved nothing but office supplies, yet one had transferred nearly $500,000 to the other in one night. That single transaction became the first breadcrumb in a trail leading deep into the cartel's logistics network. While not officially named Sentinel AI in open government reports, internal descriptions of the system reveal machine learning-enabled analytics scanning thousands of transportation firms, comparing declared shipments, bank flows, and tracking logs for anomalies. This time, the algorithm picked up a container that dropped off normal coordinates, but then vanished for 22 minutes. Its recorded GPS feed froze, and its declared destination changed in mid-transit. That glitch was too odd to ignore. DEA and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE investigators, quietly tapped into the suspect container's manifest. They discovered that while the logistics firm claimed a routine shipment of textiles, the container was in fact fitted with hidden rails and a battery pack, a makeshift subterranean module. Behind that mechanical concealment lay a network of warehouses spread across Lexington, Kentucky, and Nashville, Tennessee, locations that earlier had seemed innocuous, chosen because they lay at intersections of major freight corridors. But now, they appeared to be staging grounds for something much darker. In a covert operation, ICE agents attached discrete sensors to the container, motion trackers and altitude monitors, while it rolled through way stations. The device reported sudden deceleration as the container diverted from the highway to a rural back road near Nashville. From there, a low-profile semi-truck backed into an unmarked warehouse, and high-resolution satellite imagery showed a concrete floor with fresh excavation marks. Analysts pressed the image, zooming in, and stumbled upon something astonishing. A former county sheriff's office building, abandoned and derelict, was being used for the cartel's coordination. What had once been a symbol of local law enforcement now towered over the cartel's command and control node. This discovery triggered dozens more container and transit vehicle interrogations. Agents mapped the pattern. Each container baseline declared legitimate goods, yet they entered the tunnel system beneath the border to transship drugs and weapons. One such tunnel, previously documented by U.S. authorities under the Arizona border region, had reinforced walls, lighting, ventilation, and a rail system. According to ICE's public release, the tunnel discovered in January 2025 alone spanned several hundred feet and was capable of moving large shipments undetected. As the investigation deepened, the agents realized that the tunnel network was only half of the operation. The real breakthrough came when the container's dummy manifest was traced back to a U.S. bank account. That anonymous account, registered in Knoxville, Tennessee, handled payments for dozens of shell companies, all controlled by elements of the cartel. That bank slip set everything into motion. Airborne surveillance, midnight strikes, arrest warrants, and finally, the synchronized raids on the border and across multiple states. And then the haunting question: who made that old law enforcement station available to the cartel? How did internal oversight fail so badly that a symbol of justice became a nerve center for a crime empire? Conspiracies of corruption, infiltration, bribery begin to surface, and the investigation pivots from tunnel to traitor, from freight line to fingerprint. In the stillness of a desert night, while patrol units rolled steadily along the Arizona border, an invisible signal breached the silence. Encrypted bursts of data lit up a Telegram group chat, not from a cartel compound, but from deep inside the digital shadows of law enforcement itself. Analysts at the Drug Enforcement Administration DEA caught it first. Hours before a scheduled patrol, the precise coordinates timing, and drone launch windows of the operation were being discussed in real time. What began as a flicker on a screen quickly became a national security alarm. Someone on the inside was leaking sensitive intelligence to the cartel. Encrypted platforms had long been a refuge for organized crime, but this leak stood apart because of its surgical accuracy. Internal reports later revealed that the cartel wasn't guessing. It was operating with a detailed map of U.S. patrol movements. They knew exactly which checkpoints were manned, which drones were airborne, and which radio bands were active. Such knowledge could only come from within official channels. According to intelligence briefings, the cartel's access to that data stripped the border operations bare, turning every tactical move into an open book. The revelation was chilling. The smugglers had not only mastered the tunnels and trucking routes, they had infiltrated the system built to stop them. By dawn, that suspicion hardened into proof. Investigators discovered that a number of local police radio networks had been cloned. Each time a legitimate transmission went out, a mirror signal was captured and forwarded elsewhere, straight into the cartel's communication grid. Soon, names began to surface. A handful of officers stationed in southern Arizona and neighboring counties were suspected of transmitting security codes before each shipment crossed. Bank records revealed that small but consistent deposits, routed through shell corporations registered under construction and import firms, had been quietly paid into their accounts. It was a betrayal, disguised as routine commerce. The scale of compromise forced an immediate tactical shift. Overnight, the DEA shut down every known radio frequency, scrapped old encryption keys, and distributed new communication protocols across the task force. Code words changed, patrol paths were rewritten, and drone schedules were randomized to close the information leak. Field agents were ordered to communicate only through secure, single-use digital links, their locations now cloaked even from local agencies. The border had become a chessboard where every move was suddenly suspect. In Washington, officials realized the breach demanded a response beyond containment. Within 48 hours, a new operational framework was approved under the name Operation Iron Veil, a three-phase federal strategy designed to dismantle both the cartel's logistics and its infiltrated intelligence networks. Phase 1 would focus on cyber forensics, tracking the flow of information through digital corridors. Phase 2 would target the supply lines moving across the border and through interstate shipping hubs. And Phase 3, the most dangerous, would strike at the command infrastructure, cutting out the leadership and their domestic collaborators in one coordinated sweep. The goal was precise: dismantle the shield before breaking the bones. Just as preparations began, another shock hit the headquarters. A plain envelope arrived at the DEA's main office with no return address and no fingerprints. Inside was a small flash drive. The content sent ripples through every corridor of the agency. It contained a list of 14 names, law enforcement officers from various departments, including sheriffs, detectives, and radio operators, each allegedly on the payroll of El Sombra's network. Alongside the names were transaction logs, coded messages, and dates matching previous failed patrols. The file was undeniable proof of systematic corruption. The operation could no longer be framed as a standard anti-narcotics raid. It had evolved into an internal purge. Commanders expanded the target list to include not only the smugglers' tunnels and transport fleets, but also those within the system who had protected them. The war on the border had turned inward. No longer just a battle against traffickers, but against betrayal buried within the uniform itself. With traitors exposed and the scope of infiltration finally laid bare, Washington faced a critical decision. How do you strike an enemy that already knows your every move? At 5 a.m. sharp, a series of coordinated operations exploded into motion across the eastern United States. From Knoxville to Charleston, federal tactical teams moved in silence. 32 strike teams simultaneously hit locations tied to the cartel's logistics and tunnel network. As dawn broke over interstate highways and warehouse districts, helicopters droned overhead, gunmetal gray Blackhawks slicing the horizon, ready to insert assault teams into rural staging zones. In one warehouse outside Knoxville, a door was breached with a small explosive charge, and the muzzle flash of guns illuminated the inside. Agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration kicked open false walls, discovering hidden chambers, encrypted servers, and stacks of rifles. Meanwhile, in another location near Charleston, local police had been excluded to avoid leaks, and only federal agents were present. This tactic reduced the risk of compromised communications. By the end of the first day, the results were staggering. 51 suspects were arrested. More than 3 tons of methamphetamine, cocaine, and fentanyl were seized, alongside 133 firearms and approximately $2 million in cash. Every metric marked a major blow. The operation was described internally as the largest inland seizure linked with a smuggling tunnel in U.S. history. Recent reports show tunnels under the Arizona border used by cartels were discovered via drones. One of the most shocking discoveries occurred in a warehouse disguised as a detergent factory. Beneath cement floors and factory dust lay a fully equipped subterranean lab. Inside were workbenches coated with chemical residue, ventilation ducts feeding heavy lab equipment, and shelves lined with military-style weapons. A large conference room with monitors and maps revealed the cartel's planning hub. In short, what they had built was not simply a smuggling corridor. It was a battlefield underground. The decisive moment arrived when federal teams breached a tunnel shaft beneath a rural farm. Within the tunnel, they found the body of Manuel Cano, identified as the deputy commander of the cartel network, led by Rafael El Sombra Ortega. Cano had been shot during a firefight inside the tunnel's control chamber, a desperate last stand. Alongside him lay detailed logistic maps showing drug flow routes through Appalachia, routes that the cartel believed were secure. The discovery of Cano's body and the maps beside him sent shockwaves through Washington. Then came the twist. During processing of digital records, an accounting ledger was uncovered, one that did not just track shipments, but payments made to high-ranking law enforcement officials. Transfers, often disguised as consulting fees, linked shell companies to police department budgets. Washington officials reviewing the ledger reportedly sat in stunned silence. A multi-agency task force noted this was not merely a smuggling network, it was a cartel that had penetrated institutionalized enforcement. As this phase drew to a close, every major freight corridor inside the tunnel's sphere of influence froze. Agents reported containers, flagged Reddit terminals, rail cars rerouted, planned pickups canceled. The cartel's command skeleton had been exposed, and now law enforcement held the initiative. The battlefield had shifted from underground tunnels to boardrooms and spreadsheets. But the operation was not complete. Despite the arrests and seizures, one question loomed larger than any. If the tunnel network and logistics empire were disrupted, how many cartel leaders and network nodes still remained free and operational? The ledger suggested a deeper web of complicity. And now, as federal investigators prepared for the final phase of the campaign, they needed one more breakthrough. The tunnels were sealed, the lieutenants captured, and the maps recovered. But as investigators opened the cartel's ledgers, one question echoed through Washington. What hidden network had been protecting El Sombra from inside the very system sworn to bring him down? The impact of the raids began to ripple far beyond mere shipments of drugs and weapons. As agents sifted through the seized crates, hard drives, and tunnel walls, an unexpected layer emerged. Dozens of county law enforcement officers were named in financial documents linking them to shell companies of the cartel led by Rafael El Sombra Ortega. Files recovered from the warehouse lab showed that construction, logistics, and consulting firms, recently registered, little staffed, and operating as fronts, were funneling money into accounts held by county sheriffs, deputies, and dispatchers. This wasn't just corruption, it was a systemic takeover of the very institutions meant to fight the cartel. Within days, federal investigators met on Capitol Hill, and the reaction was swift. The White House issued a strategy document emphasizing that illicit finance and institutional infiltration represent direct threats to national security. Driven by the urgency of the revelation, Congress passed broad-reaching reforms that day. A new oversight program called Project Sentinel was activated, granting federal agencies enhanced authority to audit, intervene, and remove law enforcement units suspected of collusion. Part of the package included mechanisms to freeze assets, launch immediate investigations, and restructure compromised departments. Parallel to that, legislation was introduced in the House and Senate to reinforce accountability in public offices. While the so-called Integrity Shield Act is not the actual title, the real legislative momentum mirrored its intent. Bills like the Anti-Corruption and Public Integrity Act and others aim to restore oversight by banning conflicts of interest, tracking illicit funds, and strengthening internal investigation units. These reforms underscored a simple truth. The raid did not just take aim at a smuggling tunnel. It pointed a spotlight inward toward the guardians of the law. Politically, this operation marked a shift. For the first time in decades, the U.S. government didn't just prosecute drug trafficking, it exposed the shadow ranks of enforcement. Local agencies found their radios, logs, and budget sheets under federal microscope. The significance is enormous. A crime network had not only built tunnels to avoid borders, it had built bridges into the very system meant to stop them. And suddenly Washington was forced to act at the institutional level. Many observers compared the scale of this internal breach to past watershed moments of corruption in policing. Despite the sweeping arrests and policy changes, one fact remained. The kingpin behind it all had not been captured. Even as the networks collapsed around him, Rafael El Sombra Ortega remained at large. Local leaders, logistics heads, and mid-level squad bosses were being hauled in by the dozens, yet the mastermind continued to elude the net. That meant the war was far from over. What the government had undone by morning might be rebuilt by night. The operation's broader meaning cannot be overstated. It exposed how cartels can weaponize volatility in supply chains, exploit weak oversight in enforcement, and infiltrate systems made to protect the public. The tunnel under the border, the container shipments, the forged manifests, they were only parts of a grander mechanism, a mechanism that included traitors in uniform, corrupt supply corridors, and strategic deception. But the question now becomes, if the top leader remains free and the institutional breach still fresh, what will the next move of the cartel be? And who inside the enforcement ranks will rise to stop it? After the dust settled from the largest border raid in recent memory, the scale of the victory was undeniable. Close to 200 cartel-linked sites were seized under federal control. Their tunnels collapsed, their stockpiles burned. Yet amid the shattered concrete and confiscated evidence, one figure remained untouched by justice. Rafael El Sombra Ortega, the man who built an empire beneath the nation's infrastructure, had vanished. Along with him, disappeared nearly $70 million in cartel funds, money that could rebuild an army in the shadows. The federal task force had dismantled his machinery, but the architect was still free. In the weeks that followed, the situation grew more unsettling. Intelligence briefings from the U.S. Navy and Immigration and Customs Enforcement warned of an unexpected development. A new trafficking corridor was forming by sea. Satellite scans and maritime patrols began spotting modified fishing trawlers and cargo ships, charting erratic courses between Mexico, the Caribbean, and the coast of Florida. Officials believe remnants of El Sombra's organization are shifting their operations offshore, adapting faster than expected. What was once a hidden tunnel war beneath the border may soon evolve into a maritime chess match across American waters. The coastline, once treated as a line of defense, is now the next front line. For Washington, the message is unmistakable. Operation Iron Veil may have torn through the heart of a powerful network, but it was only the beginning of a much longer campaign. The investigation revealed not just a smuggling operation, but a blueprint for corruption, infiltration, and logistics that reached deep into American systems. The United States won a battle, But the broader war against cartel innovation, against the quiet merging of crime, money, and power, still looms ahead. So as the headlines fade and the warehouses fall silent, one truth endures. The shadows have simply shifted. If you think this story ends here, wait until you see what's moving in from offshore. You're watching Military Power, where the unseen battles shaping America's security are exposed layer by layer. See you next time.